didn't have the looks of a matinee star. Buddy Holly was tall, he was gorgeous, but he had a talent that could not be denied.
Still you tell me maybe that someday, well, I'll be blue, well, that'll be the day.
Buddy Holly was one of the seminal figures of the birth of rock and roll. He was right there at the beginning of the new culture.
A guy who wasn't just a great singer and performer, but who wrote his own original material and who had this incredible gift.
All of my love, all of my kissing, you don't know what you've been missing, oh boy. Oh boy. When you're with me, oh boy. Oh boy. The whole world can see that you were meant for me.
He was almost like one of the first guitar heroes and one of the first sort of modern pop stars. He was hugely influential.
Elvis Presley who led the way. Buddy Holly was still a high school student when the future king of rock and roll came to town. It was 1955 and Presley, just 18 months older than Holly, was on his way to stardom.
Holly came from Lubbock, Texas, so he was absolutely steeped in country music. I think what was the game changer was that he opened shows for Elvis, and he actually opened for Elvis Presley on 3 separate occasions.
He had a huge impact on him, mainly for seeing how it could be done. Buddy Holly was already musically developed, but he wasn't an obvious rock and roll star.
Buddy Holly was soon spotted by a talent scout, and in February 1956 signed a contract with Decca Records. They wanted Buddy Holly to be their star to rival Presley. Despite Holly's high hopes, however, his early recording sessions in Nashville were a disappointment.
Blue days,
the producer pushed towards a more country style. Holly was just 19, but he knew the sound he was after. Rockabilly wasn't it.
My heart keeps on calling for you.
I think Buddy was frustrated with his early recordings at Decca because he didn't have full control over them. As would kind of become apparent later, he really had an ear for production. He really knew how he wanted things to sound. And not being able to control those first recordings, I think, really upset him. He wanted to make sure it was exactly how he wanted it to be.
Sales of his records with Decca were poor. His year-long contract was not renewed. But Holly did not give up on his dream of becoming a rock and roll star.
Buddy Holly had this ban on him being a solo artist from Decca. And so he thought, right, what am I going to do here? I know, I'll form a band.
Buddy's most famous backing band, though not the only backing band he had, were the Crickets. They'd formed around friends of Buddy's from Lubbock, Texas, where he lived.
It meant that he was creating the music he wanted to create, and he put together this band that would go on to be the blueprint of future rock and roll bands.
It's bass, it's drums, it's guitar, it's very light on its feet. And in fact, the Crickets weren't called the Crickets originally. They were gonna call themselves the Beatles.
On May 27, 1957, the Crickets released their first single.
Well, that'll be the day when you say goodbye. Yes, that'll be the day when you make me cry. You say you're gonna leave, you know it's a lie, 'cause that'll be the day when I die. Well, you keep
that will be the day sold slowly at first. But as the new band toured the country, word spread.
You know you love me, baby.
By the autumn of 1957, it was topping the charts in America and Britain.
It's got that fantastic hook, and once you hear it, it's never forgotten. But again, they're narrative songs. What Holly did was he sung about the lives that his listeners were having, predominantly teenage boys and girls who were discovering each other and discovering life. And Holly had this very, very intimate way of singing, and there was a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of joy in what he did, and a lot of emotion.
They also played the Harlem Apollo, which was mostly African-American music, and apparently the crowd was not sure about them at first at all until they played Bo Diddley, which is the kind of signature tune of Bo Diddley, and it went down a storm. So they're kind of crossing that path as well.
When you make me cry, you say you're gonna leave. You know it's a lie, 'cause that'll be the day when I die. Well,
They follow that very quickly with, again, what are now considered, you know, absolutely iconic pop songs. Peggy Sue.
if you knew Peggy Sue, then you know why I feel blue without Peggy. My Peggy Sue. Oh, well, I love you, Gallix. I love you, Peggy Sue.
This time, success was immediate, as it was for the Crickets' first album released 2 months later.
The Crickets were pretty successful. They had a string of top 10 singles in the US. They were on the Ed Sullivan Show, which of course, you know, is the banner of making it in music at that time. And they really did garner quite a big following of fans. You know, they were, at the time, pretty big deal.
Don't forget, this guy didn't look like Elvis. He wasn't a natural pin-up. Before Buddy Holly, it was inconceivable that a modern music star, a singer, a crooner, a pop idol, would have glasses and look so geeky. He kept the glasses on. It was sheer talent that got him to where he was, and that, for sure, was a first. Not just in America, but in the whole world of pop music.
In some ways, Buddy Holly was almost like the anti-Elvis. He didn't have this incredibly glamorous sexual image. He was the complete opposite of that. It was Ivy League suits and horn-rimmed spectacles, but it worked perfectly for him. I think that made him quite relatable to his audience as well. They could perhaps see some of themselves in him.
Buddy Holly, of course, has this really unique, instantly recognisable voice. He has this kind of hiccuping way of singing, which I don't think anyone had done before or has really done since.
It fitted perfectly with his music. He had a very percussive way of playing rhythm guitar. His drummer was very percussive. It wasn't just holding a steady 4-to-the-floor beat. It was a bum-da-dum-da-dum-da-dum. You know, it's a real galloping percussive thing going on.
Peggy Sue, oh, how my heart yearns for you, oh, Peggy.
That vocal style that he had made him sound slightly vulnerable, almost frail at times. And I think it was very, very appealing to the audience. It was as if he was speaking to the listener, especially at the time to a lot of his female listeners.
1958 saw Holly and the Crickets break through internationally. The band toured Australia and the United Kingdom that spring. But Holly did not neglect the studio. Songs came easily to him, and he was constantly recording new material.
Oh, well, the little things you say and do make me want to be with you. Rain on, it's a crazy feeling, and
The fact that Buddy Holly was writing his own material was really unusual at the time, when most people recorded songs written by professional songwriters. Record labels would bring in songwriters who would create the pop hits and pass them on to, you know, their star of the day, who would record and release them. But what Buddy Holly did was take full control of his music. He wrote it, he recorded it, and in fact, he was very innovative in terms of production techniques as well. The use of double tracking, for example, something that he was doing really early on.
Holly had the creative control he had missed at Decca. But outside the studio, it was another matter. Business was handled by producer and manager Norman Petty. Petty had recognised Buddy Holly's potential early. It was in his studio in New Mexico that the Crickets had recorded That'll Be the Day. But as Buddy Holly's success grew, so did the strains in the relationship between artist and manager.
Buddy Holly had an argument with his manager, Norman Petty, over royalties. He felt that he was taking too much of the share and Buddy Holly wasn't getting enough. Then I think Peggy Sue was credited as Buddy Holly and the Crickets, which the rest of the Crickets weren't too keen on because they were the Crickets before, but Buddy Holly was clearly becoming a star.
As much as they looked like a gang and they looked like a group, Of course, they also fell victim to the thing that affects other groups and would go on to affect lots of groups in years to come, in that they split up.
Buddy himself was already looking beyond that. He'd gone into studios on his own, he'd made some jazz recordings, he'd actually gone in and done some recordings with an orchestra. And Buddy had started as a solo artist. You know, Buddy wasn't the singer of the Crickets. The Crickets were Buddy Holly's backing band.
Holly always was headstrong, willing to walk away to get what he wanted. But Petty retained the rights to the Crickets' music and control of the money. By the end of 1958, Buddy Holly was broke. He put his faith in music to see him through. He formed a new band and in January 1959 went back out on the road.
You are mine to have and to...
After a show in Clear Lake, Iowa, Buddy Holly and two other touring musicians were driven to Mason City Municipal Airport. Holly had chartered a 1947 single-engine Beechcraft Bonanza. It could carry 4 people, 3 passengers and a pilot. Snow was falling as they taxied down the runway. The plane took off just before 1 a.m. It turned northwest and disappeared into the night. The wreckage was found the next morning. Buddy Holly's plane had come down just 6 miles from the airport. It had hit the ground at speed, clipped a wing and cartwheeled 500 feet across a cornfield before finally coming to a rest. All aboard were killed.
We interrupt this program for a special news bulletin. 3 young singers who soared to the heights of show business on the current rock and roll craze were killed today in the crash of a light plane in an Iowa snow flurry.
I want you to take me where I belong.
The reaction to Buddy Holly's death was just, I think, complete shock. He was just far too young. It was just an absolutely terrible tragedy.
People talk about the 27 Club. Buddy Holly was 22 when he died. He'd already written a dozen immortal pop hits, but he had so much more to come. And I think really the significance of it gathered over time.
Understands me in the valley of tears.
There was sort of a mass outpouring of grief amongst his audience. And you know, I think even in the wider world to Holly's death, he was a young man who'd been hugely popular and his life had just been snuffed out so quickly and without any warning at all.
It ended the rock and roll era. You know, this was 1959. It was the turning point of this boom in American music, which has, you know, really taken the world by storm and changed everything and set the journey for where modern pop and rock would go.
So
Buddy Holly's last tour had been advertised as the Winter Dance Party.
But my
For the
mind
musicians involved, it was anything but
made
fun.
up,
They called it the
and
Tour from
I
Hell.
must go.
Concerts were arranged in 24 cities in as many
The
days.
rest of my
The schedule was a nightmare.
days, dear,
Hundreds of miles separated the gigs.
without any care.
Buddy Holly and the other act were forced to zigzag back and forth across the Midwest, hour after hour, day after day.
The bus they were using for the Winter Dance Party tour was breaking down. It was freezing conditions. It was said that someone on the bus has actually got frostbite and had been hospitalised. And I think Buddy Holly just thought, you know what, we need a break from this. I'm going to charter a plane. We can get to the next venue early. We can get some washing done, have a bit of a rest, and not have to deal with this kind of awful, cold, long bus journey.
It's one of those sliding doors moments. Big Bopper only got on the plane because he had flu. Waylon Jennings gave up his seat to him because the man was ill. They thought, let's get him to the next place he can get some rest. Richie Valens tossed a coin with one of the other members of the band to see who got the final seat. Richie Valens won and actually said at the time, That's the first time I've ever won anything in my life. So it's this awfully poignant, tragic accident that Buddy dies in.
It's money, honey.
On his death, Buddy Holly left behind dozens of unfinished tracks. Some recorded just weeks before the crash. A decade afterwards, many were released with new backing vocals and music added. Even in death, Buddy Holly could top the charts. They were just a hint of what might have been.
I'll be there, wait and see.
If Buddy Holly had survived, I think we would be talking about a Sondheim. I think we would be talking about a Cole Porter, about a John Lennon. I think Buddy Holly was one of the most uniquely talented musicians America produced in the 20th century. You know, you think he was 22. He was already in discussion to appear in different movie roles. He was already looking ahead to Broadway musicals. He was already recording with jazz musicians, classical musicians. Buddy Holly was not one of those pop singers whose career would have eventually faded out. I think really his career would have got bigger and bigger, and I do believe today we'd be looking at a colossus in the music world.
He just settled in Greenwich Village in New York with his wife. I think there was huge potential for him to soak up all these new influences.
He started learning flamenco, he started getting interested in folk music. I think he would have gone further into that, but also I think he would have gone into being a producer because he was very interested in studio production. He was a real innovator. He was looking at the studio as an instrument itself. And also, I think it's fair to credit Buddy Holly with setting up the rock and roll band. You know, 2 guitars, bass, drums.
I started singing Bye Bye Miss American Pie. Drove my
Buddy Holly's passing is remembered as the day the music died, thanks to Don McLean's 1971 hit, American Pie. But though his career at the top lasted just 16 short, busy months, Holly has an influence that extends right to the present day.
Every day it's getting closer, going faster than a roller coaster.
Buddy Holly's influences on other artists was just huge. I mean, for a start, it was the influence for the Beatles. You know, John Lennon and Paul McCartney saw Buddy Holly on TV live at the Palladium, and they wanted to be in a band, and they knew how to put that band together because they knew they needed 2 guitarists and a drummer and a bassist because of what Buddy Holly was doing.
And then the Stones did not fade away and had a major hit with it.
I'm gonna tell you how it's gonna be.
So they were obsessed. I think Keith Richards in particular has talked a lot about how important Buddy Holly was to him. Bob Dylan saw Buddy Holly when he was only 17 in Duluth and was blown away by him.
One of the big things that was a huge influence was the fact he played a Fender Stratocaster guitar. The Fender Strat became a signature instrument of kind of rock and roll and pop music and rock music in decades to come. It was the electric guitar everybody wanted to have. And for people like the Beatles and the Stones, who saw this at the time, but Holly was an aspirational figure. Their guitarists were looking at it thinking, I want to own a guitar like this guy. I want to have hits like this guy. And, you know, in his own way, he became a huge influence on a whole generation of musicians that followed.
We are talking about definitely one of the major building blocks in what we now consider modern popular music.
In the decades since Buddy Holly's death, his story has been told in books, films and musicals. There is a museum in his hometown of Lubbock, Texas, where his iconic Stratocaster guitar and horn-rimmed glasses are on permanent display. But Holly's story is best understood through his music, through the songs which sound as fresh and authentic today as they did in the 1950s, and through his voice, which has been so often mimicked but never matched.
He was really the pioneer. You know, Elvis is considered the king of rock and roll, but he is really the image of rock and roll. Buddy Holly started the template for rock and roll, and he was very, very creative. He did it in a very subtle way.
Buddy Holly was one of the rock and roll performers who provided a soundtrack to his audience's lives. He sung about his life and, by association, their lives. And I think those kind of romantic narrative songs is something that's never actually grown old. It's never really gone out of fashion in pop music.
Buddy Holly was a trailblazer who made it to the top through his talent and determination. His life was short, but the shadow it cast was long. Without him, our world today would sound very different.
He's on the Mount Rushmore of rock and pop stars. Without him, no us.
Words of love you whisper soft and true. Darling, I love you.